From 1982 to 1998, Gary Ridgway terrorized Washington state as the Green River Killer. He murdered at least 49 women, but the real number could be as high as 71. If true, this would make him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history, and one of the most brutal. From bragging about his choking ability to explaining the cold-blooded efficiency of performing necrophilia on a victim's corpse instead of finding a new victim to rape and kill, Ridgway's story was nothing short of chilling. While Ridgway is not as infamous as other serial killers like Ted Bundy, he took far more victims than Bundy ever did. In fact, by the time Bundy had already been captured in the mid-1980s, authorities were actively seeking his help in catching Ridgway, who at that point was still at large. In a move straight out of The Silence of the Lambs, investigators used Bundy's inside knowledge of serial killing and his familiarity with Washington state to help them form a profile of Ridgway. Two members of the Green River Task Force were Robert Keppel and Dave Reichert. They periodically interviewed psychologists and criminologists, hoping to gain insight into the motives behind the killer's movements. Eventually, in 1984, their interviews led them to the infamous Ted Bundy. According to Keppel, Bundy actually volunteered himself to take part in the investigation. Keppel described receiving the shocking request from a detective of the Seattle Police Department. It was a letter from a wannabe consultant, and the most unlikely person I ever expected to be of assistance in the Green River murders. The letter came from a cell on death row in Florida. The sender was Theodore Robert Bundy. I was stunned. By that point, Bundy had already been imprisoned for several years. Having deplorable but valuable first-hand experience with the same kinds of killings that had been happening in the Green River area, Bundy proved to be an asset to the case. He became a regular interviewee of Keppel and Reichert and offered his unfiltered opinion on the psychology of the still-active Seattle serial killer, as well as his motivations and behavior. According to Reichert, Ted Bundy also shared several things in common with Gary Ridgway, especially in regard to mindset. First off, there's no remorse. He doesn't have any feelings toward anybody, his family included, and that's what I saw in Bundy and what I saw in Ridgway. As Reichert explained in an interview with the New York Times, like Mr. Bundy, Mr. Ridgway craved attention and control and was prideful when discussing his killings. When detectives presented him with an unsolved murder to see if he would confess it, he told them, "Why, if it isn't mine? Because I have pride in what I do. I don't want to take it from anybody else." During one interview session, Bundy reportedly suggested that the uncaught Seattle serial killer was most likely revisiting his dump sites. He advised the investigators that if they found a fresh grave, they should stake it out and wait for the killer to return. Bundy's theories turned out to be absolutely correct, and the police were able to use them to collect samples and provide evidence for an arrest warrant. However, it took police until 2001 to finally arrest Gary Ridgway. While the title of the most prolific serial killer in the United States has since been taken by Samuel Little, who killed up to 93 women between 1970 and 2005, there's no question that Ridgway remains one of the worst murderers in modern American history. But unlike some other infamous serial killers, Gary Ridgway is still alive today. He is currently 72 years old and serving out his life sentences at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington. Ridgway is expected to spend the rest of his life behind bars.